Hey guys, quick note before we jump in. The first 15 minutes and last 5 or so minutes of Ed's track this week has some background clicks and slight distortion in it. As you know, Ed is in a new house and there is apparently some weird fluctuations with the electricity that's very hard to track down. Either that or his flux capacitor is out of sync, which is my feeling. Anyway, it's not so bad. The show is still listenable, but it is there. We're working on a fix and hopefully it will be back to normal next week. Thanks. On this episode, we discuss the concept of expat identity and what it means to reinvent yourself.
So if you've ever wanted to try something new, quit bad habits, or explore new avenues of self away from home, you'll love this episode of the Bangkok Podcast.
Sawadee krab and welcome to the Bangkok Podcast. My name is Greg Jorgensen, a Canadian who came to Thailand in 2001 who does not miss winter because as I record this, if you averaged out Thailand's temperature and the temperature of my hometown in Canada, you would be right around 0 degrees.
And I met Kenneth, an American who came to Thailand on a one-year teaching contract 19 years ago, tried to fall asleep without aircon like a true Thai person, and I haven't done it yet, so I'm still here.
Yeah, we all got to strive for something, I guess.
That's right. You got to have goals in life. We want to say a quick thank you to one of our patrons, Daniel Weiss, who supports us at the show shout-out level. Stick around after we're done talking about expat identity to hear why Daniel needs to fulfill his ancestral destiny by becoming either an island recluse or a morning radio DJ for a classic rock station. But before we start, a huge thanks to all of our patrons who support the show. Patrons get a whole bunch of cool stuff, including our regular show a day early, behind-the-scenes photos and videos of our interviews, discounts on swag, which you can find on our website, and various other things that aren't available to regular listeners. But best of all, patrons also get an unscripted, uncensored bonus episode every week where we riff on current events and random topics. We just finished recording this week's bonus show, and we did a quick addendum to last week's show about currency fluctuations, thanks to some helpful input from some of our patrons, and an interesting story about how Greg found a leaked diplomatic dispatch from 1967 in which a UK ambassador to Thailand shares his candid, and I mean candid, thoughts on Thai culture and some of the, let's say, interesting opinions he had. To become a patron, head to bangkokpodcast.com/support.
That lead cable was gnarly, man. It was really fun reading that. I love reading those old things.
Oh, I think it's great, man. I've mentioned before that I'm really into how Westerners view Thailand. It's like and the history of that. So how foreigners
right.
how foreigners in the past have processed Thailand, I find fascinating because we're basically doing that today. So we're trying to process this place. So I'm curious how foreigners have done it in the past.
Right. Hopefully in 50 years, someone will be like, yo, have you found this old audio recording? Like, there's a whole bunch of them. There's hundreds of them. And it's just observations on Bangkok.
That's right, man. Someone's gonna uncover like an archive of the Bangkok Podcast.
Right. All right. Well, before we jump into it, I want to mention last week, some of you pointed out that there were some audio miscues on our main show. I want to apologize for that. What happened was I finished editing the show and then I went back and edited it. And I only selected 3 of the 4 tracks when I was doing it. So some of those tracks got shortened and the music track did not get shortened. And as a result, some of the music cues were off by 20 or 30 seconds or a few minutes or whatever it was. But anyway, thanks for everyone who wrote in and let us know. Yeah, I know. It happens sometimes.
Dude, you're making me look bad, man. You're hurting my reputation here.
Dragging you down?
That's right. Well, to be honest, I mean, I screwed up myself. Some of you guys might have caught it. I accidentally uploaded the main show when I was supposed to be uploading the bonus show. Luckily, an observant patron sent a message to Greg, and we fixed it. So everybody can screw up sometime, Greg.
Yeah. I think it's a case of this bloody computer did exactly what I told it to.
There you go. Damn thing.
Yeah.
Damn thing.
All right. Well, on this episode, we thought it might be fun to get into a discussion about sort of like your identity when you live overseas as an expat or foreigner. Now, being 2 expats and 2 foreigners, we have some insights into this. Some would say random rants, but it's a topic that's been coming up a lot for me recently. There was our previous interview with Tony Joe about how he fits in back in Canada after being away for so long. And then I met a Dutch coworker on the train the other day who had moved to New York from Bangkok about 5 years ago, but has just moved back to Bangkok, and how he was trying to find his bearings as he tried to fit into his old town once again. And then yesterday, a line I read, which I thought was really interesting, and it said, identity isn't something you have inside, it's something you get from your surroundings.
Wow.
Which would indicate that you are a different person based on where you are. And I thought that was kind of interesting thought, and I thought we wanted to get into it a little bit more. So, Ed, what are your thoughts on this kind of a thing?
Well, immediately, I have, to be honest, I kind of have two reactions. My first reaction is, I think it's great that people can reinvent themselves. Like, more power to people who just maybe they're stuck in a rut, or they're not happy with themselves, or whatever. Their life is not working. So you move to a new location and you just become someone new. So that's kind of my first reaction. Reinvention, I'm all for it.
Yeah.
But to be honest, I'm a little bit worried, or I see potential downsides to this, because I hate when I meet foreigners and I get this kind of fake vibe from them. Like maybe they're trying to be someone they're not. I don't like that. And I remember growing up. I mean, maybe it's because I grew up in the Midwest or whatever. We're supposed to be really straightforward or something. I don't know. When we were young, I remember that we thought it was totally uncool to act different around different people. Like, so me and my friends were like, if you meet someone new, you're not supposed to be a new person.
Right.
Like you're supposed to be the same person to everybody. Like that means you're like solid. You're not like a flake. And so it's like,
right.
If you're just changing who you are based on your surroundings, like you said, there is kind of a fakeness to that. There's kind of a superficiality to it.
Yeah, I think we've all been there too. It happened to me too, and I started dating this girl in high school, and I use the word dating pretty loosely. But it was sort of, it's like, you're different, man. You've changed, man. You're doing things you never used to do, man.
That's right.
And it's like, it's just part of growing up. And let's be clear, I'm not talking about when you move to a new country. And like, if I move to Japan next week and I'd be like, all right, my name is now Jose. I'm a portrait painter. My mom was a famous classical musician, and I don't like eggs anymore. I'm not talking about like creating going into the witness protection program, but we're talking about like when you move to a new place, it's an opportunity to sort of put a foot forward that you never put forward before. Maybe you want to be more aggressive, or maybe you want to be more friendly, or maybe you're going to work on your temper. Like, no one knows you anymore. You're not constrained by this preconceived identity that you've got surrounding you. So what are you going to do to make a new identity?
I support this. I mean, I think everyone does. But here's a weird thing about close friends. Like, obviously, close friends are a good thing. I think everyone can agree with that. But it's the weird thing about close friends is they do in some ways kind of define you. And it's like part of being in a group of friends is you assume a certain identity, and I don't know, I guess for consistency's sake, you kind of feel compelled to be the same person. So it can be constraining. It's like when you just have a fixed identity, like, oh, Greg, he's the goofy guy. So it's like now you got to be the goofy guy. You got to be like Goofy Greg and like making jokes about this or that, And maybe after 5 years of being the goofy guy, maybe you're tired of that.
I'm going to roll back on that. I think that's why I wasn't really successful in high school. That's a good excuse to use, Ed. Yeah, because I was always a class clown, and when I tried to be serious Greg, studious Greg, they were like, he's just joking. And I was like, yeah, you're right. I can't get good grades. No, you're right though. But it's when you build up this sort of like momentum of who you are, and everyone around you knows that and is familiar with it. Busting out of that can kind of be difficult.
Yeah. So in a way,
it's sometimes easier to just go, well, this is the rut I'm in. Might as well just stay here.
Yeah. I mean, if you're in a new, but then of course, then if you change your surroundings and go to a new place and you're meeting new people and they don't know about your past identity, then it does give you a chance to, in a way, you're not really being someone new. You're just, it's something that actually is part of who you are, but you aren't able to express it where you already have been. I mean, does that make sense? It's like you're really trying to find another part of yourself that's actually there. Does that make sense?
Yeah, exactly. And the elephant in the room here, pun intended, I guess, is when a lot of guys come to Asia or Thailand or wherever it is, and they suddenly, they're walking by all these girls who are going, "Hello, sexy man," and they're like, "What? Like, no one's ever looked at me like this before." So they can sort of their like inner Lothario comes out, and it can come out.
There's a couple different angles to that whole issue, but I mean, from this angle, more power to them. So if there's guys who, whatever, they had trouble dating back home, or they weren't popular with women, and they come out here and all of a sudden they are popular, more power to them. Like, I everyone should be able to feel like a player, like at some point in their life. You know what I
Even
mean?
if it's only for one night.
Yeah, and the same thing, obviously it works for women as well. Like if a woman is just, for whatever reason, is not popular in some context or situation, and she moves or goes to a new city or new country, and all of a sudden she's the hot thing, more power to her.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned the not popular thing, because this is something that's occupied my sort of random daydreaming thoughts for years and years and years. Like I went to school with some huge nerds.
Okay.
I was one of them for a while, and then I eventually came out of my shell, and I had a lot of friends. But, all of those nerds who you looked at when I was younger and was like, wow, they are just going to be social rejects forever. Eventually, they find their partner. They have a husband and a wife and a family and stuff. And, when you're a kid, you can never imagine that. But all of that is because they busted out of...
Sure.
Usually, anyway, I'm making broad assumptions here, but usually it's because they moved to the city or they got a new group of friends or something like that. And they found themselves in a situation or a location where no one knew who they were before. They weren't, Janice the nerd. They were just Janice the new girl, and let's find out who she is.
Yeah, and I think that's great. I mean, everyone's on their own journey, Greg.
Right? And you take that to its logical conclusion, and multiply it by 100. You think moving to the city from your little town is big. Try moving halfway across the world.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, that's why I think this topic is especially true for expats, because if you've moved from Calgary to another city in Canada, of course you would have some room to grow if no one knew you. But the bottom line, if you were meeting only other Canadians, they would and they asked where you were from, and you said Calgary, they would already have preconceptions about Calgary that they would be putting on you. Like they would actually be trying to put you into like a Canadian box.
They'd be like, "Where's your cowboy hat? Why don't you smell like horse shit?"
Yeah. So in a way, like coming to Thailand, it's like you're so far away from your culture, and Thai people they don't know who you are. So I think you have an extra level of freedom that you wouldn't have if you were just going somewhere else inside your own country.
Right, totally. And I typed this question into Google, and there's a ton of stuff out there written about this kind of thing, this phenomenon of reinventing yourself when you move abroad. And this article jumped out at me on Forbes, and it has 4 reasons why reinventing yourself abroad is easier. And I thought it was kind of insightful. So let's just go through these 4 reasons real quickly.
Sure.
The first reason is the shock of being in unfamiliar circumstances. By definition, expats intentionally put themselves in unfamiliar circumstances where they cannot act exactly as they did in their home country and get the same outcomes. I've been told that this can foster a reevaluation and a new perspective along with new opportunities for growth.
Yeah. Okay. Just hold on a second. Stop right there. I think this is great because, I think I experienced this even though it wasn't intentional. The bottom line is when you're in a new situation, by definition, it's new, and so you don't know how you're going to react. So you're in kind of this live situation, and I think a lot of times in our lives, if you stay and live in one place for a long time, especially if it's the same place you grew up, it's like there's nothing that's surprising anymore. It's like you've seen everything in that thing. And, that can be very calm and stable. But of course it is boring, and it doesn't give you a chance to stretch your personality very much.
Stretch your personality. I like that one. Yeah. You don't have to change it. Just stretch it a little bit.
That's right.
Yeah. And number 2 is the shock and joy of being around new people. Just as expats are in a new cultural and physical environment, they are also in a new social environment, within which they're not bound by the grooved-in interpersonal kabuki dance that they performed in the past. I love that term. The grooved-in interpersonal kabuki dance.
Yeah, that's a good phrase. Yeah, I mean, I think that probably would be true if you were moving somewhere inside your own country. But just new people. Sometimes in life you need some new people. You need some new blood, and there's downsides to it as well. I mean, because when you meet new people, you don't know them and you don't know what they're really like or who to trust, and so it can be unsettling. But sometimes you got to do it, man.
Yeah, and it says, expats have told me how liberating it was to start fresh relationships. Describing their past, they told me about the growth-inhibiting triad of behaviors being heavily influenced by what others expected of them, others expecting them not to change, and then tending to conform to others' expectations of not changing. It's like this vicious circle of staying the same.
Yeah, that's dead on, man.
The third one was the lower cost of living, allowing for more free time and generating less stress. Expats have told me that because of lower costs, they could take time to paint or form that rock and roll band they always wanted to. Many have had the time to volunteer, which further changed their view of themselves and fostered positive change and growth. it's more of a minor one, I guess, but I guess that could have an effect as well.
It's kind of interesting. I don't know. I feel like I'm busy all the time, and when I was back home, I felt like I was busy all the time. So I personally don't feel like I have more free time, but that just might be my choice. But I think I'm not sure it's a time thing, but I do think when you're in a new environment in a new country, it's just different doors are open to you. Like you might end up doing something you just would not have thought of back home.
Oh yeah, you're stepping out of your comfort zone all the time.
Yeah, I mean, especially things like charity. I mean, I've done some charity work in Thailand. And it's just something I never thought of back home. It's just I just knew some friends here who were doing some charity work, so I jumped in. And so I think you're just you see different opportunities. It's like you're because you're in a new situation, and so you're, like you said, you're out of your comfort zone, and so you end up doing stuff that you wouldn't do back home.
Right, totally. And the fourth and final one is seeing and being around people who see and do things differently than you. Many expats told me that being around locals in places like Mexico, Panama, Belize, and Nicaragua who had materially much less than they did helped them reinvent themselves for many reasons. One is that this gave the expats more of an understanding of others who were not as fortunate, and when they saw that people seemed to be much happier than those they knew back home, it challenged their previous assumptions that more material goods make people happier. I think specifically he's speaking here about living in less wealthy countries and how people are still happy even though they don't have 2 cars and a white picket fence.
Yeah, it's funny. It's funny you brought that up because I have two points to make. When I was first moving to Thailand, when I didn't know much about it, so 20 years ago, I didn't know much about it, and I was coming over here. I was at a party, and one of my friend's fathers, who had traveled around the world, we were chatting about Thailand because he had already been here, and no offense to any Indians out there, but what he said to me is, I've been all over Asia, and he's like, everyone in India is poor and they're miserable, and I remember he said, everyone in Thailand is poor but they're happy.
Oh, whoa.
No offense to Indians out there, but this is what my buddy's dad said. Like, I guess he traveled around India, and I don't know who he met, but whatever, maybe he had some bad experiences.
He obviously met the wrong people.
Yeah, and so and obviously Thailand does have this reputation of being the land of smiles, and I do think Thai people are generally kind of happy. Like they don't take things too seriously. And but my second point was going to be fairly randomly. About 3 years ago, I ended up teaching this new course at my university, which more or less is a course on like the science of happiness.
All right.
I just started teaching it last week for the 3rd time, and it's kind of fascinating. But one of the class is supposed to be like the data on what makes people happy. So it's supposed to be kind of like data based, not just purely subjective. And in all the studies they do on happiness, it's like there's not much of a correlation between wealth and happiness. It's like like, for example, on average, like the Japanese are less happy than the Chinese, even though the average wealth is much higher in Japan, because the Japanese are like stressed out and working their asses off all the time.
Yeah.
And so, I think you need a certain minimum amount of wealth so that you don't feel desperate,
Right.
But I think above that, it's more about attitude. And so I think I agree with this point. I think Thai people are a good example of people who, especially most Thai people, are not wealthy.
Right.
But they do tend to have a pretty good attitude, though.
I think so, yeah. So it is a good country to sort of realign your experiences with these kind of things, like material wealth. If you're one of those guys that drives around with a bumper sticker that says, whoever dies with the most toys wins, it might do you some good to come to Bangkok or come to Thailand and see that doesn't really matter.
Right.
On a side note, the science of happiness. Can I do the next poster for the next time you teach that class? I want Ajahn Ed in like a lab coat and glasses with 2 beakers, and one says like what you have, and the other one says what you want, and you're mixing them together into one giant beaker that says happiness or something like that.
I like it. No, it's been great. Like I said, I'm only teaching this class now for the 3rd time, and it's kind of fascinating because it's just kind of a strange class, but when my university proposed it, I popped online and I found out that there are now like happiness classes at a lot of universities. There's a very, very famous happiness class at Harvard, and there's one at Yale. And I think I just read an article that the the happiness class at Yale is the most popular class on campus. In other words, it gets more students enrolling than any other course. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's going to, like on the first day of class, I always, I just did this last week. I just tell my students, like, this is a weird class because like when I went to college, like you couldn't take a class in how to be happy, but, but now you can. Now you can.
I read about a guy the other day who got his master's degree in comic book studies or something like that. Like, what the hell?
Oh, really? Whoa.
Man, I was born 20 years too early.
That's right. That's right.
And one other quote I thought was interesting regarding this thing is about why it's easier to do this when you're living overseas. This is interesting. It says, expats are less afraid to fail abroad because we've accepted defeat as part of the package. We know that our lives at home can't be replicated here, so in a way, we surrender to the unknown and let it guide us. Little by little, our limiting beliefs that no longer serve us begin to lift, and we feel freer. So it's like that social pressure is gone.
Dude, this is like deep Greg night.
I know.
I feel like this is not normal Greg.
I need some reading glasses way down low on my nose and a pipe.
No, I kind of like that. In a way, we come here with kind of like nothing to lose. It's like it's a fresh start, a fresh slate.
Yeah.
I guess it depends on your life situation. In a way, if things didn't work out here, it might not really matter that much because you could always just go home and start again.
Right.
So in a way, it's like a free play or something.
Like one up.
Might seem a little bit random, but I do think this is worth mentioning because I think it fits the topic. I actually know or knew in the past that two expat American women, two different women, who both ended up dating women here in Thailand, dating Thai women. And I ended up chatting with both of them, and they both actually told me that they had never done it before, and back home they would never have experimented. So these are women. These are women who I don't know the details. I don't know if these women were bisexual, lesbian, or whatever. But these are women who both said that back home they were straight or dated straight, and here in Thailand they just felt this freedom, and there were less people around. People didn't know them as much. They didn't have to explain what they were doing. There's just for all the reasons we've already talked about, they were like, hey, like now's my chance to just check this out.
Well, first of all, I can't blame them. Have you seen Thai women? Second of all, and also I think that, there's probably, they came from pretty conservative or restrictive cultures or hometowns. And like they said, they probably grew up with people or were surrounded by people that would never expect them to take this sort of like tangent. And right. So there's cultural implications, there's social implications, there's personal implications. So, that's interesting. Are they still here? Are they still?
Actually, neither of the two that I'm thinking of are here. Both of them, if I remember correctly, really thought of it as just kind of an experiment, like something they were just checking out. It wasn't so much that they were coming out of the closet and finally they could be who they always have been. It wasn't really like that. It was just like, I guess they were kind of curious, and it was something that it was maybe too risky to try back home or too awkward.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, more power to him. And like my old boss used to say, it's Bangkok. Everyone's a little gay sometimes.
Well, I'm not sure I would agree with that, but I understand where he's coming from.
Well, yeah, so it's an interesting topic. We don't, I've said about all I want to say about it, and we could probably keep going around in circles. But like I said, when you move overseas or something, it's not cool if you want to be like, just start lying about who you really are. But you probably have the opportunity to maybe be a bit more closer to the person that you really are. I don't know, that maybe doesn't apply to everyone, but if it does apply to you, then it's a great opportunity to be like, all right, I'm going to try being like this, or I'm going to try being more friendly or more outgoing, or I'm going to try and spend more time doing this. So it is a good opportunity to do it because you're not constrained by social or cultural or whatever restrictions that you might have been back home.
Yeah, to be honest, even though there are some potential downsides you pointed out, listeners, I think this is just one more reason why you should become an expat if you are not already one.
That's right. It does get me thinking, though. If I moved to, say I moved to Japan or Moscow or something, what would I change about myself?
I don't know, man. You might have to get rid of that goatee, man.
Shave my goatee, buy a wig.
That would be
toupee.
I'd pay to see that.
Food for thought. Food for thought. Okay, well, let's get into some love, loathe, or live with, where one of us picks a particular aspect of living in Bangkok, which we then discuss and decide if it's something we love about living here, loathe about living here, or have come to accept as something that we just have to live with no matter how we feel about it. And this week, it is your turn, man.
Yeah, it's funny. When I was thinking of this one, this is such a classic characteristic of Bangkok for me that I couldn't believe that we hadn't talked about it before. And although I have listened to a lot of shows from season 1 and 2, I don't think I've listened to every single one. So I hope you haven't talked about this before. I'm going to set a scene for you. So imagine you're just walking down the street in Bangkok, normal day, right? And you're a tall guy, you got long legs, you're busy, you're a professional, so you're walking fast, right?
Tall guy with long legs. That's a generous way to put it. Thank you.
There you go. Yeah. Thai people tend to take their time. They're a little more chilled out. So, of course, you got to move around people. You got to, you got places to go, things to do. But what I want to describe here is you're behind someone, you want to move around them, and as you kind of move to your left, they seem to drift to the left and kind of get in your way. Or maybe you kind of, and then you're like, okay, right. I got to go to the right, and then somehow they seem to go to your right, and it's just... for me, it seems like Thai people are unusually hard to walk around.
Yeah, man, this is funny. Now, to be clear, this is separate from the walking slow thing, which is something that I think we've also discussed. It's like the walking slow thing is like a perennial problem for foreigners when they come to Thailand. But yeah, man, I've noticed it before. Dude, I've been stuck behind someone who is a quarter my size and I cannot get around them. I feel like it's like they've got a 2x4 on their shoulders and they're swinging it when they step and I'm like, I just can't get away. Like they just seem to know exactly where I'm going to go.
But it's such an odd thing. And I'll tell you something really funny. I noticed it when I moved here. I had this experience. And then a friend of mine came, and out of the blue, he mentioned it, and I felt so validated. I was like, okay, fine. It's not only me.
Yeah, I don't know. And, and the only thing worse than getting behind like a slow weaver is getting behind a fast weaver. Because usually they walk like, I'm walking at 100% speed, and they're walking at like 95% speed. So not only do I have to slightly slow down... but not enough that I can just zip around them. Like they're walking fast enough for me to be like satisfied with the speed, but I'm still unable to get around them. So yeah, man, this is a solid loathe for me. I don't know what it is. It's just there's no lanes. Solid loathe.
Listeners, I know this is going to sound weird, but it's just, you got to come to Bangkok and walk the streets. I'm telling you, you're going to, like, there's some, it's like almost like Thai people have a sixth sense and they know which side you're going to try to walk around them. And so they drift in that direction, Yeah.
Oh, man, it's funny.
All right. So as we mentioned at the beginning of the show, we'd like to say thank you to Daniel Weiss for lending us his support at the show Shadow Level. And Greg, what did you find out about Daniel?
Well, I sent a couple of messages to Daniel, but he's another one of our patrons who never got back to me. So I was forced to turn to the mighty Google to see what I could dig up about Daniel. And I of course, first of all, I like playing with people's names and playing with words. So of course, I went to the Internet Anagram server and I put in his name into that. And his last name is WYSS, which is apparently it's a Swiss version of a German name. But I got two interesting anagrams that I thought were cool. The first one was "Sadly, we sin."
I like that. So, it's got this tragic sense to it. Yeah.
That sounds like a name of like a cool goth band that's popular with teenagers or something like that, right? And the second one, Ed, you'll like this, was "Win, slay Ed."
Ooh, that's a little bit scary. That's a little bit spooky. Yeah.
It is a little bit spooky, but if it happens, winner, chicken dinner. Right? So anyway, I started questioning a little bit about where his name came from and what it meant. And there's been a lot of famous people with the last name of Weiss. And I think two of the most interesting ones are probably in some way related to Daniel. So I think that he should do his ancestors a service and follow in his family footsteps. One of these two things. Now, the first one would be Johann David Weiss, who was a Swiss author, best remembered for his book, The Swiss Family Robinson. You know that one, right?
Oh, wow, cool. Yeah.
Yeah, about the family stranded on a desert island. And the second one was WYSS, a classic rock radio station in Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan.
Wow, Sault Ste. Marie, that's up north. That's the Upper Peninsula, I believe.
Yeah, hang on. Let me just type. I'm going to do some Google Foo right now. Sault Ste. Marie temperature. Ooh, look at that. It's -7 degrees Celsius, 20 degrees Fahrenheit. So, Daniel, I think you got two choices here, man. You can either move to Sault Ste. Marie and freeze your balls off and work for, be like the wacky DJ on the morning. Like, hey, this is Daniel coming to you during the morning drive-by. Or you can move to a Thai island, get some coconuts, catch some fish, build yourself a hut, and make your family tradition proud. I'm leaning more for the Thai one, but we'll leave it up to you either way, man.
Yeah, I'm going to go Thai. I think the Swiss Family Robinson, I'd go that direction.
Yeah, okay. So officially we're saying that, Daniel, you need to move to a Thai island and build yourself a life. And we're looking forward to the invitation. Maybe we'll record a show down there one day. We're like, hey, we're coming to you live from Daniel's hut. So that'll be fun. Daniel, thanks for the support, man. We appreciate it. And we look forward to seeing you on some lost island somewhere.
Yes, thank you. And a final thanks to all of our patrons who help keep the show ad-free. Patrons get a ton of cool perks and the warm, fuzzy feeling knowing that they're helping support the show. Find out more by clicking support on our website. And connect with us online. We're Bangkok Podcast on social media, bangkokpodcast.com on the web, or simply bangkokpodcast@gmail.com. We love hearing from our listeners and always reply to our messages.
Yeah, you can also listen to each episode on YouTube. You can chat with us online or even reach out to me directly on Twitter, where I am BKK Greg. Thank you for listening, everyone. And we'll see you back here next week.
We will see you next week. Bye-bye. U.S. tariffs on Thailand and U.S. tariffs on Thailand and how